Good afternoon, everybody. Today is September 2nd. We're sitting here with my good friend Krystal, one of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation, see where it goes. Say hi, Krystal.
Hey.
So, tell everybody about you. Who is Krystal?
Krystal is just your regular woman trying to make it, her late 20s, chilling, living, surviving.
So for you, what does all that mean? You chilling, living, surviving. What do you do?
I am a student. I'm in my master's program, getting my MED in school counseling.
That's Master's of Education?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So what are you hoping to do with that?
I honestly have no idea. Like, originally, I wanted to be a school counselor because I just really wanted to work in the school system and help people. Mm-hmm. But the farther I get in my program, I realize I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. Like, not a single clue.
So I know that feeling. So when I was in undergrad, I was an econ major, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I ended up where I'm at with no prior inclination as to where I wanted to be. But bringing that up, that's interesting. So I met you in undergrad when I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So recall for the audience how you perceive when we first met back whenever it was.
I don't think I remember it as well as you. I remember that it was freshman year. We are in
Your freshman year.
my freshman year. It was my freshman year. We were in the same African American Studies class with
Jonathan England.
Yes. Damn it. He was awesome. And we had our own little clique going. It was like me, you, and Elena. And we used to make fun of Chimichanga. That's how I remember it.
I remember pretty much the same way, because it must have been my junior year, I want to say.
I don't know.
How old are you?
Were you a junior?
I think so.
Oh.
When did you start at Maryland?
I started in 2008.
Yeah, so I would have been a junior. I started in 2006. So it would have been my junior year. I remember meeting Chimichanga. She came up to me before class one day. I was sitting outside of class in tidings, and she approached me and started talking, and I thought she was a little weird, but she was cool. And then I remember going into class, and I don't remember if it was the first day or whenever it was, but meeting you, meeting Elena, and then we kind of talked from there.
Yeah.
What do you remember beyond that?
Not much. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, so for context, this was like 2008, 9 years ago from the time of this recording. This is September 2nd, 2017. So
Ooh.
It might have exactly been 9 years ago when we were sitting in this classroom or walking out of this classroom, whatever it may be. One of the memories I have is we left class, and it was like me, you, Elena, and Chimichanga walking out of class, and we ended up over there in front of the Stamp Student Union, just standing there talking for a while. And I remember just talking some BS and trying to get you guys to come out and do something, but nobody did.
Yo, it might be because I'm a pothead, but I don't even remember why we called her Chimichanga. Like, how did she even get that name?
This is the first I've heard the name, honestly. So
Oh, you didn't know that we called her Chimichanga?
I did not know
Me
that
and Elena
until just
steady
now.
called her Chimichanga like the entire time.
Like, I'm not going to put her name out there because I don't want to embarrass her in case she listens to this. So me and her actually, we're cool. We don't talk, but
You're friends with Chimichanga?
on Facebook.
I'm friends with Chimichanga on Facebook.
Yeah, I wouldn't say
Facebook doesn't count. Facebook friendships aren't
We're not even friends on Facebook.
I don't know how that happened.
Used to be.
I'm honestly super duper concerned with the fact that you know that we're not friends on Facebook and you didn't refriend me. Like, what is that? Like, I didn't even know we weren't friends.
I just feel like it's one of those things where we were clearly friends at some point. There's pictures that I've posted on Facebook where you're tagged in them, so clearly.
Am I tagged in them?
Yeah.
If we're not friends, then how am I tagged?
We were clearly friends at some point.
I don't.
And then you clearly unfriended me at some point.
Why did I unfriend you? What'd you do?
I didn't do anything. I'm innocent.
What did you do?
I'm innocent.
You must have done something.
But I just remember, so actually to move the story forward, so after my junior year, after your freshman year, I guess we didn't talk all that much.
Not at all.
And then sometime this year or last year, we discovered we kind of both lived in the same area because I had moved back to College Park.
And I had moved to College Park.
You had moved to College Park, and I hit you up, seeing what you were doing, and we decided to hang out, and we decided that blah, 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 blah. So sometime at that point, I probably looked for you on Facebook because I'm pretty sure we're Instagram friends. We're Snapchat friends. So I discovered that we weren't Facebook friends. So I was like, all right, I'm going to let sleeping dogs lie. We were clearly Facebook friends at some point. We're not now. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to make that step at this point.
But here's the thing. If we're Snapchat friends, that means we're even closer because
that's true.
I have maybe 50 people on Snapchat. Yeah. And that's not even like, those are the people that don't post included. On Facebook, there's like 600 and something. I don't even know because I don't like people, so I try to keep the numbers real low. Every once in a while, I do go through my Facebook friends and just kind of like purge,
and
like just
purge me at some point.
I just purge, like if I haven't seen a post from you in a while, or if I don't care what your post says. Not that I don't care what your post says. I don't recall deleting you, so I don't know how that happened.
So let's just mark this right now about this conversation. Let's move on. For those that don't know, Krystal is very active on Snapchat. She has one of the more interesting Snapchat stories that I follow.
Thanks.
So Krystal is good for probably every day giving you at least 2 minutes worth of content.
Yeah.
Or she just has these conversations that she has. So
pretty much with myself. I've been told that I'm crazy, actually.
I don't think you're crazy.
So I've been trying to play it up a little bit, like, oh, I'm crazy. No, because here's the thing. I talk to myself frequently. I have a dichotomy between what I call my parent, which is the super ego, and my child, which is more so... Ego. I'm not sure. It's either the id or the ego. It might be the id because it's super childish. Like, it really just only wants what it wants when it wants it. So it's like kind of that balance between, hey, this is what you need to do because adulthood, you're an adult, and hey, this is what I want to do.
So with that said, I don't know what's on this Snapchat right now.
Oh,
We're going to play a sample.
Oh, no.
Let's just see what comes out.
So back in high school and college, I was upset because I felt like I was a catch and no one wanted me. And they told me that one day that would change. And the thing is, they weren't wrong. Here we are 10 years later, and now dudes are trying to convince me that they've liked me since high school. But I don't want them. And I really don't like how they think they should get back credit. So what if you've liked me since high school? It's been 10 years. You said nothing. You get no credit for any of that. You're late. You're not talking to an insecure high school girl who would have just loved any attention from a man. You're talking to a grown-ass woman with things to do.
Oh, man.
So this is the Snapchats I get the pleasure of hearing damn near every day. And hopefully that kind of paints a picture to who I'm talking with here today. So when I tell you that Krystal is one of my more eclectic friends, one of my more intelligent, one of my more connected with herself friends, this is the type of things that I mean.
It's so weird to hear yourself played back to you.
So it's kind of funny because everybody kind of chuckles when they hear about somebody posting these 2-minute Snapchats, but to me, I find them pretty appealing, pretty unique, definitely, because not everybody is secure enough to put themselves out there the way that you did, but to do it consistently and to bury yourself, that is something amazing.
Well, I do it on purpose because I'm an introvert and I'm excessively introverted. So a lot of times I hang out by myself. I have a lot of thoughts, and I would really like to share the thoughts with my people, but I'm not so great at reaching out to my people, especially because if I reach out to my people, then they might want to talk to me. Man. So that's a way that I can just I can tell people what I'm thinking without necessarily having to have a conversation with them.
So I can understand that, but quick pause. So in case you people do not know, kind of the gist of this podcast is that me and my guests sit here and we find the vices of our choice and we have this conversation just loose and flowing. So sitting in front of us today, Krystal is a tequila girl, so we have 1800 silver here.
I'm actually a pothead, but if I had to drink, it's tequila.
So yes, that's important to know. And so we have the 1800 tequila, and we also have Chairman Reserve spiced rum, which is a recent find of mine. It's the best thing that I ever had. It's delicious, isn't it?
Caribbean people know how to do rum.
Right. And then Krystal here, as she alluded to, is a fan of marijuana. So she's had some as well.
A fan, yeah. I definitely say fandom is pretty. It's a love. There's a love relationship there.
All right, but jumping back, so before we let off, we were talking about your Snapchat, and you explained that you like using Snapchat in the way that you do because you're an introvert, and it allows you to communicate to the world without necessarily having to have a response back.
Yes.
So I understand that. I'm an introvert at heart myself. Even then, I have trouble necessarily bearing myself to Snapchat, but you seem to have a aptitude for it. So.
Well, I just really want to be understood. Like, that's one of the things that I really strive for. I want people to know who I am and be able to accept me for who I am. I feel like I spent a lot of time trying to fit in and be normal and be all of these things that society tells you to be. And I got to a point where I just wasn't being who I am. So Snapchat kind of lets me give people like a sneak peek to kind of test the waters before I just like pop out and be like, oh, hey, this is Krystal now.
So that's interesting. So do you feel like there's aspects of your personality that aren't acceptable to larger society and that has to be relegated to Snapchat, or is it just more the introvert part of you that doesn't want to put that part out to the world?
Ooh, I think it's a mix of both. I really do, because, well, like we've said, I'm a pothead. That's not really like, it's becoming more acceptable in society, but it's still not extremely acceptable. Also, in terms of just being like a woman with strong opinions and voicing those opinions openly, that's not necessarily something that a whole lot of people are comfortable with yet. But yeah.
So I want to hold that there because I want to get back to that, because that's actually been the tenet of a lot of our conversations. Strong woman in society's acceptance of that, and in your dating life, whether or not men respond to a strong woman. But we're gonna hold that for a second. Hold that thought. I see it bubbling.
I'm gonna forget it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just feel like before we have to say that there is a difference between being a strong woman and being a woman with strong opinions, because there are plenty of strong women that are not necessarily women with strong opinions.
So where do you put yourself? Are you a strong woman or a woman with strong opinions? Or are you both, or are they mutually exclusive?
I would say that I'm a woman with strong opinions. As far as being a strong woman, I don't know if that's fully been tested yet, because I've seen women do amazing things for their families. The amount of self-sacrifice that they're willing to endure is really remarkable.
So I agree that they're not necessarily the same thing. I've seen plenty of strong women who don't have strong opinions, or at the very least don't voice those strong opinions. And I've seen women with strong opinions that don't necessarily have the backbone to stand by those opinions. And I don't get the feeling that you fall squarely into either of those camps. And granted, we know that you have strong opinions. We've heard your Snapchat. But I also think that you are a strong woman, because I haven't, in the conversations that we've had, I've challenged you on a number of things, and you don't back down. You don't accept what I say. A lot of times I find that if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I disagree with their point, they will acquiesce, which is not something that you do.
No, I'm not good at that.
So to me, that rings as if,
It depends on if I care or not. If it's a subject that I care about, then I definitely advocate for what I think and what I believe. I think that there's a certain wealth and value to exchanging ideas and exchanging perspectives, because that's how we get to know one another. We're all very different people. How do you become aware of the woman experience? How do I become aware of what the man experience is? How do we become aware of each other if we're not willing to have a free-flowing conversation that often involves disagreements?
And I actually think that's one of the failings of society right now. Nobody wants to listen to the other side. You know, I know males are definitely guilty of this, whether it comes to the various different political conversations that come around. You know, males are making decisions on female issues without taking time to understand the female perspective. I think on a more micro level, in relationships, we tend to do the same thing. We do that a lot. You know I'm guilty of this. I'm a guy, and I tend to think that the females that I'm dating should kind of understand my mindset, or...
But how do you understand a mindset that you haven't lived?
Exactly. So intuitively I know that, but I think it's just kind of a failing of society on some levels that we don't always take time to appreciate that. You know, I'm a man. I'm going to come at things from a certain perspective based on the way society has treated me, based on my experiences. But Krystal, being a female being from a different background, is going to look at things a different way, and her way could be just as valid.
Yeah, and even in it being just as valid, it's valid for me, because that's what my life experience have taught me. You've had your experiences with people, I've had my experiences with people, and we've learned different things from those interactions. And I think it's really important to, in order to understand a person, try and get into their head and really figure out their perspectives and their experiences so that you can understand where their opinions are coming from.
So how do we get to that point in society? Because I agree. I think, knowing you, knowing myself, I know we're fairly forward thinking and understanding that there's value in different perspectives and blending those perspectives to come with the best outcome. And we're both minorities, but you being a woman face more of an uphill battle than I do. And kind of what you are doing in education, you're kind of on the forefront, on the front lines of trying to transform that mentality. So how do you kind of see the path forward?
The path forward. I think that we really need an increase of value and education in the importance of self-awareness. I feel like not a lot of people take the time to get to know themselves because the person in the mirror can be extremely frightening. A lot of times when you spend time alone with yourself, you get to dark places and you have to get yourself out of them. But until you understand yourself, you can't begin to open your mind to start to understand other people and to understand that people are different.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, let's pause for a second. We have these shots sitting in front of us.
Oh man, we do.
That you poured, by the way.
I did pour them.
She poured the shots.
No, I really did. I don't do things I don't want to do.
So we're gonna tap them. We're gonna drop them. We're gonna throw them back.
All right.
Salud. Woo, that's good. Man. So, before we get back to the heavy stuff, something that I want to institute here that I learned from my boy Xavier Woods is I want to give the guest on this program a chance to kind of personalize this experience to them. So rather than Krystal, it's an amazing name.
Mm-hmm. It is.
But
it really is.
I want to give you a chance to introduce a nickname that you'll be known as from here on in this program.
Miss Tiney.
Miss Tiney. Can you explain what that means?
Okay, I like Miss Tiney for multiple reasons.
Because you're a tall girl. You're like 5'7".
Yeah, somewhere around there. A little shorter than that. But, okay, so I'm Caribbean, just in case anyone was wondering. And growing up, there was this song that I really became attached to for no apparent reason at all. And it's called Tiny Whiny. And in it, he's talking to, essentially, Miss Tiney. Tiny whiny, whine your boom boom. And that's just really I just got very attached to it. Also, because my last name is Small, it like kind of fits. Like instead of being Miss Small, I'm Miss Tiney.
Okay, Miss Tiney.
So if I'm Miss Tiney, who are you?
I don't know. I haven't came up with that yet. I'm not very creative.
You mean you had me come up with a nickname and you don't have a nickname for yourself?
I'm not very creative when it comes to the nicknames. I go by King Corum online. I go by State of Byron every now and again. I don't have anything particularly creative, and that's kind of the issue with me. I like creating content. I like
Hasn't anyone ever called you anything? Like you don't have any friends that have nicknames for you?
No, not really.
Really? No. Not at all?
No. I am just
change
Byron.
that.
And I feel like my friends don't love me. They won't come up with these terms of endearment for me.
Your friends don't love you.
So you can come up with one. You create one right now.
Oh no, I can't create one right now. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, we can hold that. We'll see at the end of this pod if you have something
I'm gonna come up
new
with
for me.
something.
But so let's getting back into it. We have a couple things that we talked about earlier. So we did do some preparation for this podcast. So one of the things that we got into and we had a conversation about was the blending of work friends and friends at home.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you
we
feel kind
did
of
talk
passionate
about
about
that.
this.
Yeah.
So can you explain?
Okay, so a lot of times people are friends with their coworkers, and I don't really understand it because I like to keep my work relationships and my personal relationships very separate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't necessarily tell the people that I work what's going on in like my love life or my family because I go to work to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go home, that's something completely different. I don't even like blending my home friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have my best friend, I have my soul friend, I have like my boyfriends, and then I have like my family. Notice I said boyfriends and my family. And
No judgment here.
they don't really blend well. Part of being an introvert and the way my personality is set up, I really enjoy one-on-one relationships with people. Mm-hmm. But that one-on-one relationship is not quite the same when you take it and you start mixing it with other things.
So as somebody who is fairly close to a lot of his coworkers and at the same time can understand where you're coming from, it is an intricate balance. Excuse me. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe intricate was the right word.
Intricate is a good word.
Yeah, it's an intricate balance.
Or delicate.
Delicate balance of maintaining relationships with people that you work with outside of the workplace because
I don't like it.
For me, I met a lot of fantastic people that I work with. I've been to their weddings, I've been to their houses. They're great people, but there always is that line of that friendship, you have to be treated as more of a friendship because if it goes sour outside of the workplace, that does affect your work hours. But at the same time, creating those relationships outside of work makes it easier to work with those people because if I have a question, I know I can get on the phone and say, let's say, for example, hey, Franklin, I'm coming to your wedding later on. Obviously, it's not part of the actual conversation, but we have that bond, and I can ask him a question, I can ask him a favor, and having taken that time to build that relationship and makes that bridge a little bit easier to cross.
You know what it is? I don't trust people that much.
No?
I don't trust people with like information about my personal life in the work environment because at the end of the day, if it comes down like between my money and you, I'm gonna pick my money. And I don't want there to be any confusion. You think that we're friends. A lot of times the way my personality is set up, I end up in management positions, and I don't want you to get confused into thinking that we're friends because at the end of the day, we're here to make money. We're not here to make friends.
I mean, I think that's fair, but does creating those relationships make it easier to make money?
No, it doesn't. Because it blurs the lines. Now you have a dual relationship. Like when I would manage and people would start to think that we're friends, and then they start coming into work late, they start slacking off at work, having conversations that aren't fit for the workplace. Like if you can work and talk at the same time, great. But most people can't multitask that well. So you're not really doing your job, and that's taking away from productivity, which is taking away from our money.
So that might be a good place to pivot. So Krystal's about her money.
I am about my money. I just feel like, oh, did you see my chore chart?
I did not see your chore
The
chart.
thing is, I was having a conversation with my brother, and we decided that we really don't do anything if there isn't money attached to it. So I don't move unless it's for money. So I had to take that concept into my real life and try and figure out how to be an adult. So I pay myself to do my chores.
So, that's very interesting. I'm glad you brought this up. This is the first time I heard you say this. So I have a coworker, going back to that, who I went into his office and he had a board. He had a specific name for the board, but that's what you just described was generally the concept behind it. So
Yeah.
he had a list of things listed out, and it's like, did he make his bed today? Did he get to work on time?
Yes.
And based on how often he did those things, he was putting money into his fund.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting because I am an organized person in a sense, but I can't quite get myself to that level of organization or that level of responsibility. It's more so I just have this innate thing, like I know I need to pay my bills, I know I need to go to work on time, and I just do those things.
Yeah, but what about the other things? The things like making your bed. Like making your bed, I don't really care for making your bed. Like I just feel like you're gonna get back in it at the end of the night, and that's gonna be that. But it looks so good when it's made. So on my chore chart, if I make my bed, I get $1. So if you made your bed every day of the week, now I have $7.
So I guess I just take another perspective on it, and I respect that. I wish I had that level of dedication to, actually have a plan written down that would ensure that I do the things that I need to do. I just know that I'm not really capable of sticking myself to that.
Well, that's the thing. Most of the time, I decide that $1 is not worth it, and then I don't make the bed. I should probably pay myself more.
I wish I had that type of discipline, but I just don't. I bought myself a whiteboard trying to keep myself to some sort of promises, map out my week, but that is still in itself very general. I can't quite bring myself to paying myself for certain
You know
tasks.
what? It's important to have goals.
It is extremely important to have goals. It's also important to have your own style. And you have a very unique style. And obviously this is an audio podcast, so you can't see what Krystal looks like sitting here right now. So let me paint you a picture. Krystal is, I don't know, how would you describe yourself? You're like brown skin.
Yeah.
Brown skin. You
Brown
have a
skin.
very unique earring in. I can't even describe how it is.
It's actually a fake gauge, and I've been told that I'm not supposed to tell people that it's fake, but it's fake. Let's just... Why am I going to hide that from anyone?
You're tatted up.
I am.
Yeah, I was just admiring one of your tattoos
I
a couple
love
seconds ago.
tattoos.
And we had a long conversation about something a lot of people find taboo, but I find very interesting and fits Krystal very, very well. Krystal has an affinity for combat boots.
I do.
Can you explain the combat boots to the people?
Okay, here's the thing. If anything goes down, I'm ready for it in my boots. Like, no one wants, I'm sure, I don't want to be that girl you see in like the movies where she's running around in heels and she can't keep up. No, that will not be me. No matter what the day has, I'm going to be able to conquer it in my combat boots. If zombies take over, combat boots. If we have to take to the woods for some reason because they're about to blow up DC because of all of the shit that they're doing there, combat boots. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready for some shit to go down, Byron.
I find this so intriguing because most people look at combat boots and they think kind of weird, gothic.
I was gothic in
sort of
high school.
things.
I
You?
was gothic in high school.
Explain that to me. You're like shopping at Hot Topic or what? Explain that. I don't know.
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting phase of life. I wore a lot of black. Eyeliner was my best friend. I didn't really shop at Hot Topic because that clothes had a lot of like excess stuff on it that I didn't really need. And my parents didn't really like me wearing black, so I had like this really dark brown nail polish that I could get away with wearing because I could be like, it's not black, it's brown, look at it.
So that's just so different to me because I didn't really identify with anybody much in high school. I was just kind of me, and that's kind of how I look at you. You're kind of just Miss Tiney. You do your own thing. You're on your own path.
Yeah, but in high school, everyone is trying to fit in somewhere, and I have a certain like. There's a darkness in my personality that a lot of people don't understand. So even though I have multiple parts of my personality that are light and they're bubbly and they're fun, there's also a dark element that I also needed camaraderie for, and I found that in the more gothic peers.
So how do you see yourself now? Do you still have that dark side? How does that manifest itself?
Well, I have depression and anxiety, and I like to like classify when I say I have depression because a lot of people are just like, well, what are you depressed about? They think it's some situational thing that happened in my life that is making me depressed currently, but it's more like a lifelong thing. Like I remember the first time, and this is gonna get, I'm sorry, it's kind of dark. The first time I prayed to die, I was 10 years old. And I have no really reason to want to die at 10 years old. It's just that I just recall feeling like on my 10th birthday, I had lived a long life and I was only 10. And I started thinking about how many more years I have left to live, and that would just seemed, impossibly long.
Well, I'm going to take a shot to that. That is deep. But I want to explore this. So this was 10 years old.
Yes.
And you were having these thoughts at 10 years old.
Yes.
So where does one go? You're 10 years old, you're thinking that, and you're in high school, and obviously you're changing a lot in high school, and obviously that affects you strongly, and then you get to college, and where you're at now. Can you, if you want to, describe that sort of journey and explain to the people out there kind of the mentality, what is going through your head? With that.
Well, that's the thing. It really is a journey because a lot of people have different perspectives on life. And at some point, like, they teach you that having depression or being depressed or not really wanting to live in the same capacity that other people do is wrong. There's something wrong with you. So it kind of really, it affects the way you see yourself. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not like everyone else? And it really was like a journey to just see like I'm different from other people. In terms of how I got here and where I am now, like, we talked about earlier, I'm in counseling because I really feel like, how do you counsel someone that's depressed if you don't know what they're feeling? You can't empathize with a person if you have no idea what it feels like, what they're experiencing. So I take counseling from a completely different perspective where it's just like, hey, I know what you feel. I feel this too, but we're in this life. There are people that care about us. We have to survive. We have to keep moving forward. These are the tools that I've used to do so, and I want to help you make your own tools so that you can survive as well.
So with that, we had a conversation earlier before we went on live about legacy.
Yes.
So it sounds like your interest lies in, and I don't know if this is true or not, this is kind of me extrapolating. It sounds like your interest is in providing this sort of service that would have been useful to you back in elementary school, middle school, high school, that didn't exist, and being that person for people who were like you back then, to talk to empathize with, to make that journey easier.
That is really what I want. Like, I just remember the first time I was sent to, the only time I've been to the crisis center because I got smarter after that. I was in like 9th grade. I had written a poem that was like really dark and gothic like because I was a goth. And my school counselor came across it because someone like turned it in because I forgot it somewhere. I don't know. And they sent me to the crisis center. And the services that I got didn't teach me anything except to hide my depression from people. If you don't want the hassle of trying to manage all of the different people that are going to try and tell you that life is a blessing and convince you that there's something wrong with you, you just shut up. You don't talk about it. But not talking about it really kind of disables you from being able to connect to people in an authentic way that really will benefit you in the long run, and creating support systems that will ultimately keep you alive.
So with that, that's something that's a world that is completely unique to me. So with that, with the platform that you have right now on this world famous, well listened to, award-winning podcast, what would you say to Krystal back in high school, back in middle school, to her? What would you say?
I would tell her to stay strong. I have Stay Strong tattooed on my wrist because it's just a really accessible place to look down and remind yourself, like, just keep going. Everyone is struggling, even if they're not going to admit it and they're not going to be as open about it as maybe I'm willing to be. Everyone is struggling. Everyone has a story. Everyone has some sort of hardship that they've endured and they've made it through. And what you're feeling, though it seems like it's permanent, is ultimately really temporary.
That is a very beautiful message. And it's one that I happen to agree with, because I've been fortunate enough to have two parents in the household, have a fairly well-off life. But even then, I go through my struggles and I kind of start feeling like somebody doesn't understand, or nobody understands.
Yeah.
So how do we move forward as a society? What do you see? I mean, you're in this profession, you're in this education realm. How do you see our path forward to better understanding that mentality, whether it's mental health, whether it's whatever it may be? What do you see the path forward as?
Well, we have to first start by acknowledging it. Like I said, every time I would mention that I'm depressed, even now at the age of 27, like when I tell people that I'm depressed, when I tell people that I'm depressed, they have no idea what that looks like because we don't talk about it at all. Like, we really kind of brush it under the rug, as we do with all other mental health issues, which is really why we're starting to see like mental health coming to the forefront, because we can't keep brushing it under the rug. It's something that has to be addressed. We have to look at it as a problem, and we have to decide how we're going to address it. We can't just keep ignoring it.
With that in mind, that's kind of talking the macro level.
Yeah.
So with somebody who's experienced this, I want to go to the micro level.
Okay.
So if I'm a person and I come across you and I begin to understand that this is who you are, what can I do on an individual level to, ensure that we have a healthy friendship, healthy relationship when you begin to tell me that these are the type of emotions that you experience?
Accept me. It all comes down to like a level of really acceptance and validation, because a lot of times when I tell people that I'm depressed, their first instinct is to try and fix me. And the thing is, I'm not broken. There isn't anything broken about me. I'm just different. And really being able to accept things that are different as something that is not necessarily wrong, but just different, is really the first step.
And do you find that the people that you encounter, whether it's in your everyday life or your dating life, can understand that?
No.
So what is your experience in that?
My experience in that, especially like when you look at dating starts off in a very interesting way because everyone loves happy Krystal. So a lot of times I mostly date men, but I'm not opposed to dating women. they take it on as their responsibility to like make me smile and make me happy. And when they can't do so because I have depression, and no matter what you do, I'm always going to return to a depressed state at some point in time, they take it as like a failure. So it's like it really has to like open up communication. Like, you're not failing, this is just who I am, and I need you to stop trying to fix me and just accept that, hey, some days Krystal is gonna be sad. Krystal, what can I do for you when you are sad? Like, just really being able to put themselves aside for a second and be like, what do you need in this moment?
And what do you feel like is what you need in those moments? Because I feel like, again, somebody who fortunately doesn't deal with that, and I'm not trying to say that as a demeaning way, because I realize that's just something that people
I wouldn't
go through.
wish it on anyone. It is fortunate.
But what type of advice would you provide to people who, are interacting with you, who are trying to make that type of relationship work?
I tell a lot of people in the beginning of dating me, like, I'm not broken. Don't try and fix me. And the thing is, my love language, I don't know if you know the 5 love languages. My love language is touch. So a lot of times when I get depressed, I really just need you to like listen to me, let me talk, or let me not talk. If I don't feel like talking, just sit there in silence with me and just be there. And that really makes a whole world of difference, just having a person to be there and accept you.
And in your experience, that's not something that is common.
No. A lot of times people get really, not intentionally selfish, but it turns into selfish because now they feel bad. And a lot of times once they feel bad because I feel bad, now I feel obligated to try and make them feel better. But I don't have it in me because I'm already trying to feel better myself. So I can't be worried about you right now. I have to worry about getting myself out of this hole. And it's not something that you can do for me. It's something that I have to do for myself. Yes, I want you to be there to support me, but you can't get me out of this hole. That's my job.
Is it not possible for your partner to help you get out of that hole?
It's possible, but it's unlikely, and it's not something that I like to depend on, because when you start depending on other people to get you out of your depression, what happens when they're not there?
That makes a lot of sense, but kind of giving a part of myself away is, when I look at relationships, no matter who you are, part of it is having somebody around to help you shoulder that burden when you need that help. Because I look at myself, I think I'm a fairly independent person. I've got along fairly well in my 29 years, most of it being single, and it seems like you've gotten along pretty well on your 27 years. But it is nice sometimes, whether it's the good times, you get a promotion, you get a raise, whatever it is, to have somebody like, oh, hey, babe, I got a raise and blah, blah, blah. I feel so great. And having somebody just share that. And it also helps to have somebody when you're down, I've had a hard day at work, and that person being there for you, knowing your likes and being able to, oh, okay, you had a bad day. Let me take you out to your favorite restaurant and buy your, rent your favorite movie, and we can sit down and just have the type of night that you like. Does that extend to the type of emotions that come around with depression?
Yes and no, because a lot of time, and like what you were saying, they're all situational things. You got excited because you got a promotion, or you're down because you had a bad day. It's something that's very almost quantitative in a sense, where you can see it. The depression is something that it just happens. And they want an explanation for it. People want a reason why. And a lot of times when you can't give them one, that almost just, it makes you more stressed out than if you were just handling it on your own. Because that constant, like they need a reason. Why are you depressed? They start feeling like, did I do something? Does she not like me? But it has nothing to do with them at all. And the fact that you have to like put down your emotions that you're already going through to now deal with their emotions because they can't handle what you're going through, that you live with, that you've been living with since you were 10, 9, 8, however long you've been experiencing your depression. It's a lot to take on other people's emotions when you're dealing with your own.
I can understand that. I think that's something that I can relate to, because I've been in those positions where I've had significant others that when I felt some sort of way completely unrelated to them, and I tried to express that to them, you know, I ended up trying to carry their burden along with mine.
Yes.
Which is a very difficult thing to do. And then there's kind of my personality. I try to be strong for others. And it seems like your personality is similar. You're a Taurus.
Yeah. And I'm a counselor. Like, who counsels the counselor?
Who counsels the counselor? That's a good question. And actually, with that, I want to kind of transition to the end of this podcast and really give the listeners a opportunity to know who Krystal is. So I look at Krystal as, you know, I have one rule in life, and that's to never settle for average. And you are anything but average. I can call you many things, but average isn't one of them. So I appreciate, and we had this conversation earlier, the unapologetically, unabashedly Krystal that I know. Tell me about her. Tell me how you see yourself.
Oh, man. I don't know it's necessarily how I see myself, because I don't necessarily see myself the way other people see me. Other people see me to be, and we've talked about this before, just like with you and me, they see me as aggressive, they see me as combative, they see me as argumentative. I don't necessarily see me as any of these things. I see me as Krystal. I think it's important to allow yourself to be multiple types of people. I feel like a lot of times we place ourselves in one box and we're like, this is who I am. Well, no, that's who I am for that moment. And the next moment I might be someone else. And just really allowing yourself the freedom to just flow through everything that you want to be.
So I find that very interesting, because I strongly agree with the second half, and that's, you know, as people who have jobs and have educations, especially people of color, you being a woman, you have to kind of adapt to your different situations.
You do.
So the Krystal that is at work isn't going to be the Krystal that's at home. It's not necessarily going to be the Krystal that's with her family.
They have different names.
Right. So that I understand, but I also don't really see you as combative, whereas I can, or aggressive, whereas I can understand why people in society might see you that way. And this harkens all the way back to what we talked about, 40 minutes ago, and that I don't see you as aggressive or combative, but I see you as strong-willed and a strong person, which is not necessarily what everybody else in society sees it as. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So, to me, you're Krystal, and the fact that you have opinions is actually a very good trait. And is that not something that you normally see that as in other people? Or other people see that in you as a good trait?
No. Not a lot of people see it as that. Because when you're looking at it as, okay, I'm in my role as a daughter. No one as a parent wants their child to be combative. They don't really, as much as you want your child to have opinions, you only want them to have opinions in conversations with other people, not with you. If
Fair.
You're looking in the workplace, now you have a boss, you have a supervisor. Unless you're in charge, you don't necessarily want to deal with someone that has strong opinions. We call that insubordinate. So it's like, sometimes it's viewed as a strong thing or as a good thing, but a lot of times it's viewed as a negative thing, especially as a woman, to be outspoken and to have strong opinions and not to be afraid to voice them.
So I guess that's where I come from, where that kind of comes in conflict, because I've done a lot of leadership training, and I feel like effective leaders do want their subordinates, quote unquote, to have strong opinions, although they need to temper them and express them in the appropriate locations. Like, you don't want to be in a meeting with the client and have the people that you're working for you, disagreeing, but a good leader wants to hear what their subordinates feel and use that to inform their decision.
But how many good leaders do we really have? They say absolute power corrupts absolutely.
So I 100% agree. So we're kind of getting into, if you ever interview me, my philosophies in life, and I 100% agree. The biggest dilemma facing this country, the biggest dilemma facing probably the humankind is an absence of good leaders. And good leaders do tend to look for people like you who have strong opinions, who aren't afraid to voice them. When there is some kind of, all right, at a certain point you voice them, I've heard them, I've considered them, we've discussed them, and it needs to, I'm the boss that needs to make the decision. But in general, I feel like to be better as a society, we need to do better at listening to people and encouraging people to have their opinions so that we can make the best decision. And that's not something that you find.
That's ideal, but that's not what people do, because a lot of times people are afraid. Like, if you're a supervisor and you've got a subordinate who has all of these different ideas that are different from yours about how we can increase productivity and how we can increase efficiency, it almost to a certain extent will make you feel insecure because you're afraid of being replaced.
And I agree, and I think that is precisely one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. People are afraid of new ideas. People are afraid of others. Change, yes.
Change.
People are afraid of change. And that's the one thing I try to encourage at my workplace is change, being welcome to new ideas. I can understand and appreciate why, especially me working for the government, why we do things a certain way, but I have a stronger desire to improve the processes, find ways where things can work better for more people than they currently do.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that given your vocation, given your background, that is something that's important to you.
It is something that's important to me. What's really important to me is that people have the opportunity to live authentically. I feel like we come into a lot of issues because people are trying to be something that they're not. They're trying to be something that society has decided they want them to be. And we don't really have time to get into it, but we briefly discussed earlier the value of men is largely attached to how much money they make, and the value of women is largely attached to how many men want them or desire them. But we get so caught up in being who society wants us to be that we don't get the opportunity to be ourselves, and I feel like that's really unfortunate.
And that's actually a good place to pause, and that's something that we want to pick up on the next podcast.
You mean the one that I'm not invited to?
Quite possibly. But we want to close this out with something I want to do to try to get to know my guest. Okay. We're going to play a little word association.
Oh, no.
And I haven't prepared for this at all. I'm going to throw something out there. You're a counselor. You know how this works. So I'll say something. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
I hate these.
Okay.
University
of Maryland.
College.
Green.
Blue. No.
Government.
I should have said money.
You should have said money, but you didn't.
I'm going to say money for government.
I thought you would have said money or weed for green.
Oh my gosh. See, this is why I'm terrible at word associations. Government, power hungry.
Curl.
My hair.
Caribbean.
Me.
Roly poly.
Oli. No, that's really. What else do you expect someone to say after roly poly?
That's why we're playing word association. We're about to figure that out right now. Tequila.
I want to say God, but I feel like that's a terrible thing to say.
Time out. Why does God come to your mind when I say tequila?
Because God clearly blessed us with tequila.
All right, let's move on. Dance.
Party.
Boots.
Combat.
I don't know why that makes me laugh every single time. Just the idea of somebody being very comfortable in combat boots, and I love it. It's just not something that you hear every day. So it's fantastic. So let's go to your other side. What's the name of that place? Comfort Zone.
What about it?
Isn't that a place?
It's a
in
sex
College Park?
store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're messing up the game. You're supposed to say the first.
Oh, sex store.
You ruined it.
I'm sorry.
It's
I
over.
told you I'm terrible at
It's
this.
done.
I told
So
you that
it's
was
over.
terrible.
It's done. It's whatever. It's cool. You messed it up.
I made
I
my
threw something out
disclaimer at the
there,
beginning
and then
that I was
said
terrible.
the term, and then you just
You know what?
monologue completely separately.
Yeah, but you like comfort zone isn't even like they
It's
don't
really
know what
weird.
the comfort zone is. They don't know that it's a sex
But
store.
that's the point. I say that, and if you would have said something like
You know
that,
what?
then we
I want to
could've
go back.
explained
I
it.
don't even want to say sex store. I just want to say basement. Comfort zone, basement.
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 What does that mean?
That's where all the good stuff is in the
Uh-huh.
basement.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Krystal.
Thank you for having me. I had
Look-
fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it as much as you've had as much fun listening to this as much as we've had recording
Yeah.
it. It's been a fantastic time. This is the first, except for one other kind of offshoot.
Tell
the
him
first,
that you want me to come back.
Let me know if you want her to come back. I'm kind of dubious on that right now. We'll see. If the fans demand it, I'll allow it.
They
We'll
want
see.
it. They do. They know they do.
But thank you, everybody. Hope this hour has been worth your time. Special shout out to Chairman's Reserve Spice Rum because it's delicious and it got us through this podcast.
Yes.
Also, shout out to 1800 Silver Tequila. We didn't touch it, but it motivated us. It was there. Have a good one. I'll see y'all.